In today's episode, we have a book architect, a 30 plus times published author, speaker, course creator, and today we are going to talk about his new book, Reinvent Down Under 7 Steps to a New Life. Gunnar Habitz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Of course, we want to talk about your new book. It came out on Monday, so first of all, why do you think this book is different from, all of the other books and videos that people talk about how to change your life, and how does this book kind of differ and can help people to actually make change in their life?
Yeah, happy to say this. So the book, first of all, Reinvent Down Under. I came on the idea 1 year ago when I had my 9-year anniversary of coming to Sydney. And I count for not my time to come as a tourist, not even when I came as on a work visa, but when I started deliberately to find work over here. So I have done leadership studies, and that started on early May in 2016. And last year at 9 years, I thought, okay, this 10-year anniversary, I can write something. And the purpose was to take the transferable elements of that story about change management, like the metaphor of going over a bridge, and put this into a book. So it is not a checklist of you need to get a visa and you need to get a job and you need to do this and stop your post. It's not this, but rather how can others also find their way to make a move, and especially when they're not fully prepared.
Why do you think even like changing yourself is so hard, especially, most of people give those checklists that not a lot of times work, or they fall back into their normal routines after they decided I want to change and want to do that. Like, why do you think is that? Why do you think it's so hard?
Very often we are sitting in our bubble where I think everything else is also here, it will be all right, okay, it's fine. It's a bit like when you are sitting in a pot of water, the frog would not jump out when you do the water a little bit more. But if someone from external tries to get into the water, they will see it's far too hot. And this type of element is an important one, because when you don't want to change enough from the inside, it just becomes hard when you think about that. So it needs to do a first step out of it. And that first step is not the action. It's rather the awareness to figure out that there is something maybe not going by plan, or an external trigger, which I had, or just the realization that life is flat. And when it is flat, it goes down. It doesn't grow.
It reminds me kind of the saying that you only change when like your life right now. It's like kind of, how to say it, it's like bad enough, or hurtful to you enough that you start to change, that you need to do that change, and that's for most people. But then it comes the thing that is, somebody wants to change, but they are in this bubble, they are too comfortable, they don't really want to change, but kind of in the like back of their head they are, oh, I should, but I'm too comfortable right now. What should they do?
Fully right. It's this recognition that there is no growth in a comfort zone. That makes people hopefully sometimes think. You might not do it by yourself easily when you realize that life kind of works. But when you see from other people around you that someone there is breaking out of this, you wonder, how did they get this, let's say, another job or go to another city, even country? How did they make that happen when I also would like to? But when then there's not enough of inner motivation and not an urgency from an external trigger, then it is often in the too hard basket, or I can do it later. The tricky thing is we only have this one life, and I do it later is something very difficult. That doesn't really exist. So therefore, so I worked, in my example, I worked 16 years in the same company in Switzerland. It was nice, 11 years, so moved internationally in the same company. So I changed 5 jobs in 16 years, is not too much. And then I realized when that was taken away due to a layoff, that all what I built in terms of system around me is not there anymore. This type of safety net, the assumption that life is kind of that a pre-given, I know where I'm heading to, that was gone. And this type of external trigger made me think of, why not do a move? When, if not now? Because people don't make a big change when the current state is good enough.
To kind of get back to the beginning, like we said, the awareness is kind of the starting point. Pausing, taking a pause and looking at your life, kind of what it actually is, rather than, as you said, being in this bubble. How should people like make this first step of being aware where they are and where they want to go, and why is pausing so important? Because especially in this day and age, everybody is just go 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 because because of the AI technology and everything.
Yeah, that particular can be seen as a big threat, or as a chance for change to say, okay, I'm not behind, I go rather ahead of the curve. Because particularly on the AI topic, compared to any institutional type of environment, we can all individually learn and do something about it. But otherwise, you're right. So sometimes you see disruption, which is ready to either you have to change something, like in my case, or you see it from others and get inspired by that. That also is valid. But this type of trigger needs to be there, that you realize and compare if what you have today is not good enough anymore. If it maybe lasts you another year or so, okay, but maybe not longer. So then it costs too much of not changing, of keeping the status quo. So then better to put yourself in it. And sometimes you're right. Sometimes we must be given in mankind. We need to go to very, very bottom in order to recognize that we can then go up and go much, much higher. I see this with many people who are coming to Australia.
Oh, okay. And then kind of, as you said, being aware, but then it comes kind of the thing of having the right mindset, because when somebody probably lost their job, they just may say, oh, like how unlucky I am, and having this victim mentality rather than kind of learning from it. And like kind of what's the mindset people should acquire to kind of get to the changing stage, that things can change and you are like responsible for your life.
It truly is, and this way of responsibility, take it in your own hand, is something which rarely people do out of a comfort zone, because then they realize their life is going, yeah, it could be better, yeah, maybe one day I can do something, and that is the mindset topic. When we believe that tomorrow is same as today, and then afterwards, of course, we can stay in where we are and try to get 1% better every day or every week or whatever. That would have compound interest, but most don't do. They stay flat, and that means compared to anyone else, they go down. So it is a big mindset work. And I always say there must be a kind of trigger that get you in the mood. It can be a disease. It can be some external factor that you could not plan at all, not only career-wise, but it could also be something like for the health of a family. And you might need to care for someone who doesn't have any other chance, and then you need to completely change something. This can happen. And then it often feels like need to completely change, radically leave what has been before and get into a new situation without even seeing when this comes out again. And that sometimes, particularly on personal care, is a challenging one. For career, it's easier because you can try to explore something else. So my approach was there also to say, what about you observe some that you resonate with and figure out there was someone who maybe all of a sudden came into your network, maybe a year, 2 years ago, that you know them. And then you ask, what did they do? So the tricky thing, when we feel it's good enough, then we don't do action, we don't observe. When we feel we could be on the road of change, but we're not sure yet, then it would be wise to talk to someone who made a move, who made a change. And not only by saying, how can I learn from them? But if somebody makes a change and comes into our ecosystem 1, 2 years ago, then it's, I think, our role also to help them. And while you help getting someone restarted again, then you can learn and be inspired that it's actually not too difficult. So this personal relationship with change from others can make a massive difference.
Yeah, and to get a little back, you were talking about kind of picking your motivation and maybe kind of being aware of, oh, I have somebody else to take care for. Do you think like this, all of like changing your life has to do with kind of the purpose of your life, kind of the bigger thing, not only just, what's on the surface and what you're doing?
That's a very good point. We often do not know or don't recognize what our job really is in life. So life doesn't put us there as kind of figures, but rather as very often people have a task in life. We just don't know it yet. And to recognize this goes more into the spiritual side of things. But at least when we understand there is something, so that draws us, that pulls us into one direction, then we need to be open for that. And that makes a big shift. So I figured out when I came first time to Australia as a tourist, I looked into when I arrived in Hobart, Tasmania, it was nice. Melbourne, okay, big city. But when I came and saw Sydney Harbour, I realized that actually would be the place. But I didn't know. But it feels automatic, like that's it.
And also, what's so interesting is like you like traveled so much. Do you think it helps, kind of with kind of the self awareness and kind of self actualization, like improvement that you're in so many cities, you've like, kind of experienced all of these environments, like and kind of especially when I travel, I feel like I'm always kind of getting to know new versions of myself, and all of that. And like, how was it for you, or what may be the city that you remember the most in all of your traveling journeys that were the most?
Yeah, good point. Because I strongly believe when you are traveling and be open to how others do things, instead of insisting that you know the best way how to do things, that's the best to have this openness. I've been a tour guide as a student. I met many tourists. I accompanied from Hamburg to London to Amsterdam to Venice to Prague, quite a lot, and I learned to be open in other cultures and to find my way there when I'm not surrounded by a safety net network. So that was helpful. Um, Being this type of open to understand, that's how they do this, or that's why this goes that way, then you realize that you cannot directly apply something. I learned the crazy driving in Barcelona by car. I could not do the same thing in Germany or Switzerland. It doesn't work because they drive a bit more crazy. But it works for them. Think about a crossing of cars and people in India that doesn't have a German order, but it works. So being open and recognize other people do run their life differently. I take it with curiosity, with appreciation, and this type of openness helps me to consider there is another way of doing something. And this approach helped me then further in my writing, but also from a travel point of view.
What are the things that even you learn from kind of experiencing in another countries, like kind of their way of living, that you use to this day, even in Australia, and it's really helpful, but nobody is kind of, it is kind of the lesson that you need to learn just by being, traveling in that country, not just by, watching traveling videos or all of that you
Yeah,
use to
by the
this
way,
day.
you also mentioned before what is a city or place which kind of made an impact on that direction from that and taking it all in. Maybe in my top five, there's surely included when I take it as a country or region, I take Bhutan in the Himalayas because it's completely different. They don't tick by gross, national gross product, but national gross happiness. It's completely different way, as if there is no modern world outside. They live and dress the same as maybe 100, 200 years ago. And to observe that that is a way of life different to what we have was very enriching. So that's for sure. Within the top five countries, I would always count New Zealand because it is kind of a dream. And therefore I moved to Switzerland because in Europe it is the closest equivalent of New Zealand. Just no ocean, but lakes, but also glaciers and beautiful nature and a smaller, clever country. So that's why I moved to Switzerland and became then also a Swiss citizen. In the meantime, also Australian. So adopting in a new place is important. Not to say I come here as the one who I've always been, but to learn how a place works, and therefore also try to be part of community. That is a tricky thing, and that can work well.
And to get back on that kind of adaptation when you're in the new city or like in the new country in general with new culture, what are, as you said, being part of a community, do you have any like other tricks or things you did to kind of get used to the country, get used to the people and all of that?
I have. So I will give you two examples. When I moved from Germany to Switzerland a long time ago as my first real employed job, I didn't know anyone, but I just started at the same company, HP. So then I met people from early days and I still connected with it because they helped me to get going. So that's this type of close environment and in one industry. And I thought, yeah, okay, everyone will be like this, which of course is not the case. But then when I came to Australia, I didn't have that. So I had to really rebuild my own network from scratch. There was a big help on being active on LinkedIn. And therefore, in the meantime, I'm also training. I published 2 books about LinkedIn to build networks, not in the sense of I need a job, but how can I find interesting people and learn from them? In particular, how can I introduce them to each other? So that's more that approach.
No. And to get back to a little bit of that cultures and all of that stuff, I kind of realized in your books you have a bunch of great lessons that are from different even cultures and kind of this wisdom from them. And I wanted to know if you kind of if you were in the country and you talked to some old people or something like that, you learn that if you learned something from them that was kind of, oh, I never heard that and this is so good, and it's kind of the thing that, oh, I knew this but I never kind of heard it like said in this way, kind of the classical wisdom of all of that. And from where was it, if you can remember anything?
Good point. The typical thing here is when we are open, then we listen actively without judging. When we listen by comparing in the sense of, oh, we do this better or we can learn from it, but that's not so good because we think as if we already prepare an answer. But if I want to really explore a place, I need to just sit and get it and understand it and take it in without telling what they need to improve, but rather try to find out why something is how it is. Think about just normal thing. There are some countries where when you invite guests, they need to take off their shoes. Some others don't. Then you can really observe behavior of people, courtesy they have between themselves, or the ignorance and simply saying, I'm the guest, I do as I want. No, please no. So there are these little things where you recognize that to do certain topics in a different manner, or even when it comes to behavior of older versus younger generations. In Australia, people are queuing to get into the bus. In Europe, continental Europe, not necessarily. They are crowding and then try to fight to get in the bus. But here, no. The queue is maybe even the length of 3 buses. That goes only step by step after work because that is how it's done here. And I like to observe this and try to find out how can we learn from that, without judging, without telling them what they have to do. That's one of very important topics when traveling or when coming to another place, to find that out. You will always see when you go somewhere else that there is always trade-offs. Yes, this looks positive, but there can be a downside on something else. So there's a key question to recognize and even talk to people that you find and then ask, hey, why you do this or this way or that way? And maybe they didn't come on the idea. I'll tell you a funny example. If you go in Germany or Switzerland to a pub and you're ordering beer, you're a bunch of people, then and I say it's not Australia because I would need to order at the bar, but normally when the waiter comes there, and then you have the coaster there, and then they would simply mark down 1 beer, 2 beers, 3, 4, and 5 goes this way. In Germany in particular, that it looks like 5, and then they do another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When I went to early days in Czech Republic or Slovakia, they do 13, 14, 15, 16. It's very hard to count. It is much easier in the way in groups of 5. Easy for everyone. But it's not me to tell the waiter in a pub in Czech or Slovak, how they have to do it. That is actually good, and that's how we do in Germany, and therefore you need to do it. This type of judgment is wrong. There's a reason that they don't do that they do as they do, and it's good to observe this. And sometimes you can talk to people, but that requires openness. That requires the willingness to learn from each other. When I came here to Sydney in 2016, in this week of the book launch, I started my leadership training, and I didn't know anyone. So I had to really make my way, and I needed work. So, but instead of asking for that, I simply asked them for kind of who they are, learn from them. And then I recognize in the room that that person here has a challenge. That one there has maybe a solution, but they don't know. They don't talk to each other. But the way how I can phrase questions tells me I should better connect those two. And that works pretty well. That's my way of getting started, getting into people and do something about it.
Yeah. It's pretty good being, especially the kind of openness. And I think same goes that with talking even to some people in your country that may have just different traditions, or even on a podcast, there, especially when talking to so much people that kind of have the different perspective on the same thing, and kind of listening to them and seeing that even they have a point, not judging them. That is kind of part of active listening, and all of that is very important. And to get back even to that cultural thing, I think especially in all of cultures, food and drinks are very, very important. And I wanted to know if you have like any favorite food or something that kind of fascinated you on your travels that you remember to this day in the kind of gastro industry.
So that depends on where, of course, I'm going. When I first time came to Czech Republic, which was in Slovakia, back then was Czechoslovakia when I've been very young, then I discovered that the cuisine there is different from, let's say, Mediterranean Europe. It's different even from German. There might be commonalities with Austria, but then I found more the way how they did things without being fully industrialized, and I really enjoyed that. But when I then came to other places like Bhutan, what I mentioned, there is not much variety. So that's not the main focus over there. Of course, and a lot of chili and rice and so on, like what you have in Himalayas. You also need to understand with cuisine, when we have a place like in Sydney where you have everything from every direction, but many types of food that's imported by migrants are created in a different way. If you take Greek, it's wonderful, but Greece is hot. So then you cannot serve the same way in a cold Scandinavian winter. So there's a different type of food. And we might have everything over here, but still, when I came here, what I really much also like is not only Mediterranean, but also Middle East cuisine from many countries, from the West in Morocco, where I have some kind of heritage with, but up to Lebanese food, plenty of here. And there's one thing, particularly on food, on cuisine, this often brings people together so that they can share their stories. So whenever I had a chance to go somewhere and be invited or simply find out where people hang out, even private parties, I really took that. And that was wonderful to learn from them. So it, not to note down everything, but it gives me a kind of a understanding of a place, understanding of the people which came there when they made that. And Sydney in particular and Melbourne, there are cities built by those people who came here, not like who have been there for thousands of years. So then everyone brought theirs. And that is kind of a summary of the world.
Interesting. And to get back on the book, actually, when I kind of look at all of the framework and what you're supposed to do, it kind of seems like it is the exact opposite of kind of what we are wired to do in like human nature. Or I don't know if that's just my observation, but most of it is just when you're going, when you're in this kind of go flow, you're supposed to stop when everybody else is going, kind of look around what you're doing. You, as you said, you don't have that script, and the patterns in your life, you start to recognize them when everybody is just going with the flow and kind of the opposite way. And it's just yeah, what do you think about like kind of this whole process that kind of goes against what everybody else is doing?
Yeah, so first it starts a bit with mindset work and what you are given by family backgrounds. My dad always used to say, only a dead fish swims with the others. And sometimes people are like sheep. They do the same of the same. And they enjoy because it's a safety net. If you want to embrace change, you need to understand that safety net is gone. Then you need to break out of this one. So that's how that can start. But we are not wired for that. We are wired for keeping within that. And also, we are often taught in society that's not a good thing to do. So we better keep where we are. And when I grew up, they told me all how the whole journey works until we get retired. How would I know when I'm 20 or 25? What happens between 65 and 70? So I thought instead of waiting until then and then exploring the world when we're already in retirement, let's do this much, much earlier. Much better. But it means accepting that some actions are different. And I give you one example. One day I just finished university and came back just to say hello to some students. And I met one. I said, hey, can we meet next month for lunch? I said, well, I will be in New Zealand then. And that was when I lived in Germany. And they said, wow, I always want to get there. I said, yeah, just book a flight, just go. And now we talked a while ago for 12-hour different of time zone to make a big move. And then my wife back then, not formally, but my girlfriend, but now my wife, of course, we then decided to learn some English. Why should I do it in England when it can be done in New Zealand? But that was really this type of moment to recognize, oh, there is a world out there which is different. And that was actually pretty cool, particularly when you try to embrace change of a physical movement for a while. No need to do it forever. And you go to somewhere which is a different place. So if you live, for example, in Vienna, and then you say, okay, let's maybe live a year in Zurich, it's kind of too close. But when you're in Vienna and say, okay, maybe I need to move to a place, let's say, which is different type of cultures, something like maybe Nordic. You go to Tromsø in Norway, or maybe you go to Lisbon in Portugal. There is a lot of change, language, customs, behavior, and the more you do, the earlier you do, the more you can learn from it. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's so interesting because even now, even my school and everywhere, it's kind of everybody, almost everybody has all of their life figured out, and I think there's the stereotype of I will travel or I will actually live life after I will get everything done, or they say later, that we talk about it later basically means never. It's the new never. So you know all, um, all of that. And I think, oh yeah, what would be your advice to some 20-year-olds that just ended university? Would it be just to travel, to live life, or what
Do
did
you
it
mean
be? What would it be?
thank you. Do you mean someone who started uni or just finishes?
Finished, finish.
I would talk to the person 2 years before. And one day when I hired my first employee, that was in Czech Republic, I've been looking for someone who could be older, but I demanded kind of that they should have worked at least for half a year somewhere abroad. I wanted to have that foreign expertise because the role was across multiple countries in Europe. So I wanted to have that person knows how it is to work somewhere else, knows how it is to consider another marketplace that he had to then later look after. That was good. I hired one who studied half year in Sweden and a half year somewhere else. Was it Germany? I don't recall it. And when I then saw even on his CV that he spoke, no, on his LinkedIn that he learned Swedish. And my name is Swedish. All of a sudden, I started talking Swedish in the interview, and I've been so surprised that he could even counter that because he's been living there for half a year. Little small talk, minute or two, but that is bonding, and that is good. So this experience from having been somewhere else can be very, very, very useful. Instead of universities are producing bachelors, which are all the same, because then they are hiring, or they are then candidates for the same type of roles to do the same again. That makes no sense in my view. So for someone who is, let's say, just finished a university study, take it more bachelor than master, that they would like to explore something, it would be valuable to do an experience abroad somewhere. And even with at the end only an internship or a contracting role, whatever it is, but at least something that shows them the way. In a world where many roles have international flavor, that sets them up for success much, much better. And that is a very important point. So I would hire someone who already can prove that they have been somewhere else, that they're open to it. Not to send them there, but when they've done it before, would be very, very helpful.
Also, I need to ask for. We talk a lot about traveling, and what would be those traveling tips for beginners that even just to come right out of the university and traveling for the first time alone abroad. What would be kind of the fundamentals that would you would say to them that not a lot of people talk about when traveling?
The first thing I would suggest that person to read books from those who have done that. So, for example, the person who wrote the foreword for my book here, Veronica Lorca-Smith, she went with 21. She's from Canary Island in Spain. She went with 21 to Taiwan to learn Chinese. And then she worked a lot in Asia, is now in Hong Kong, and works across multiple languages and so on. So she's here. And now she's a keynote speaker and she has this international experience, and the mindset husband is Australian. So this type of being intentional and international early on is surely a helpful thing. So read from some who has done something that gets you kind of openness. There's many of those here on Substack or on other sources, surely in YouTube, who share stories what they tried. Maybe not always works, but at least works well enough. And that is important there as well. Yeah, that be inspired from those which are relatable. Yeah, I think that would be the first step. So when they have that, then they follow certain people. Then they also realize that there is a range of tips which are shared, and it feels like it could work. And I give you my example with not 21, but when I moved to Australia 10 years ago, already in 40s. So then I thought I might need to have also professional advice. So instead of just exploring without having big costs from a life already with 21, but instead with 40 already ahead. So then I've been seeking a visa agent, and that visa agent I'm still in contact with 10 years ago. She didn't do my paperwork later because my company they had someone else, but that advice is still solid. Find out would it work. And I recognize Canada wouldn't do without knowing someone having studied there, getting a sponsorship. For me, it didn't work. Too old. But Australia worked. New Zealand would work as well. So when you figure out and hear from examples, then you can realize, okay, let's do something. When you are very young, in that sense, comparable, many countries have this something like a work and holiday study, and they can then explore the world for a year or two, and that is extremely helpful.
Okay. Yeah, it kind of makes sense. There are especially I think there are a lot of great YouTubers and even like Substackers that make a lot of great traveling content. So when I will be traveling someday, I'll look it up for sure. And in your book, you have this little kind of this term. It's called Ikigai, I think it's pronounced, and I've heard about it a lot, especially when a person gets into self improvement. And I wanted to talk about it a little bit more. What is it, and how did you kind of got into it and all of that?
Yeah, so the Ikigai is a kind of way of the Japanese type of culture, how you can improve yourself. And it has a lot about with certain awareness and how to put out. It technically speaking is typically represented by 4 circles. They're partially overlapping. That gets maybe one in the middle, the best overlap, and some other there around. And you would simply put out there those elements which are really critical. That includes something like what you love to do, like your passion, and then what can you really do, like job or vocational or whatever you learn to do, and then can also think about what the world needs. That really fits into Japanese philosophy. I worked in automotive at the beginning, And I remember when Mercedes didn't look down to Toyota, but rather up for this, for the style of business improvement, Kaizen and Ikigai. And then the fourth one also is to figure out, when you know what you're good at, what also you like to do, and what the world needs. The question is, of all of this, is there anything that is also paid well? Because when you don't have that, then you do volunteering work for a charity, but you cannot monetize, and that of course is not going well. And then you get a couple of things on that in the displays when it comes to think about joy or longevity. That it's a practical type of philosophy that you can take as a framework and put your own Ikigai together and realize, okay, it, for me it would be this way. Yeah, that's a good thing. It's a lot about thinking and reflecting and feeling and put it together. This visual approach really makes it with these being this four. You can also take circles with just 3 circles. It would be a Venn diagram, but the 4 is much better for the Ikigai.
No. And let's say somebody says that, oh, I have those 3 circles, but the job isn't paid well, or I'm not particularly good at this thing. So, what should I do? Should I, chase the money first, or should I just chase my passion? Or, there's this kind of dilemma that kind of creates when you don't have this kind of thing that hits all the 4 circles.
Yeah, yeah, you're right on that one, because that's then tricky to find out what is it what drives you on that sense. So you can try to prioritize then and figure out what is the more important thing. Do you need to follow more the passionate side of it? Will you need to follow more the money side of it? I personally believe when you have a good drive, uniting the passion side, the mission side, together with where you have proof that you can do that, so not something completely new, then also the money will follow. Because
Makes sense.
you are basically, you are spreading this. Sometimes you feel that of some people, they're really in the element, and that's exactly that.
Yeah. But and then when we are on the topic of jobs and kind of picking the thing, for me personally, I have kind of I was always kind of scared, especially when I have a lot of interest, and especially as a person that is interested in a lot of things. Like a lot of things are you have fun doing it. It's kind of the scarcity of picking the wrong thing and being on the wrong way, and that kind of scares me because, oh, what if I chase this thing for a few years, but then I learned that it was a kind of waste of time, or I could do this thing and I would be much better at that end. Do you have some kind of advice on that, and how to overcome those kind of insecurities you have, or kind of commitment issues with all of it?
The tricky thing in life is to find the right balance. There's some people who are hunting every possibility, so then they don't do anything pretty well. And that's bad because they're also not known for one thing. And then there are those people that you can think about who you know for one particular thing and they have nothing else. Also, it's too dangerous when there's no alternative to something. So we know that. So finding the right middle ground on that is better. If you take it on the area of social media, so I'm a big fan of working using LinkedIn. I use it for work and I have a lot of passion for what I do in email marketing, so marketing technology. But of course, that is the more business-related side or company-related side. But then also, I write books. So there should be a place also to talk about it. And finding this unique angle, who you are, is difficult when you are a 9 to 5 person and at the same time you do something for yourself and you choose the same channel to talk about it. That is very often a big issue. So if I would, let's say, as a side business, drive Uber, nobody knows, nobody cares. No need to put it on. So that's easy. But on other things, it's actually not. So you need to be mindful of what image you have about yourself on one side, like on this side. On the other side, you know that nobody cares anyway. Sometimes we make it up too much within ourselves, this type of conflict, but there is a conflict. You should just manage that well.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've never heard this kind of, oh, you need a little bit of that balance. You need to commit a little, but y at the same time you shouldn't just, have no safety net. That's interesting. And to that, topic you said about rewrite, like kind of the stories we tell about ourselves, to ourselves, basically. How do you think people could, rewrite those stories, and especially that goes back into emotional processing, and all of that stuff, and you know what's the th- what are your opinions on that?
Yeah, on that one, I think it comes a lot on observing others, be open to listening to stories without judging them. So if somebody achieved something what I would like to do as well, then I need to be rather open and figure out what are the steps that they have done. I'm personally someone who comes from engineering background, software engineering. So I would take a result and figure out how can I reverse engineer the whole thing to get to the same outcome. Um, Not to start with the same process and not knowing where we're heading to, but to see what came out and then get to there. Therefore, the next book I'm actually writing is called Write Your Book Backwards. And that doesn't mean necessarily to write from right to left. Doesn't even mean that you write the ending first before the beginning, but you think what's the outcome of the book? What's the relationship that the book should do to you? What is the perception you want to have in the market about yourself? How do you place a big launch event as the one to say, okay, that is what will happen? So that's my way of doing this, so that writing a book is just a consequence of a strategy and an approach that is already visible. So that then at the end you just need to execute and write. So that I've done exactly this here for my new book, Reinvent Down Under. Very personal, as you can see, it really is myself. And I wrote it as a concept. I had the cover a year ago, quick and dirty, so to say, with Canva. I took the photo. In the meantime, this typesetting is not professional. But then I also spent a lot of time in what should the book actually do for me, for my business. How does it work together with my corporate role? Does it hurt or not? No, it doesn't hurt. And then I spent a couple of weeks on the whole concept, how it should flow. When I said 7 steps to a new life, I wrote that on the cover a year ago, and I didn't know which steps they actually are. So then I only knew it was 7 when I went through this and came here. So then I noted it down in a certain way. And then I put it out, had it in bullet points, and said, okay, the only thing I need to do is to then fully write the story. But same thing if you want to do a change and explore, we have a long exploration phase maybe, seeing from others how they do, is an approach is forming in our head. And then we then build a network of those who went through this. We can then go to them and say, hey, you are already step 4 on the journey up to 10. Those in 10 I will never be able to reach because they don't listen to me. But those on 4, you're great. I'm at 1. I want to go to step 2 and then maybe 3. Can you help me pull me up or give me that advice? And as soon as you do this, you will surely meet others who are in the same shoe where you have been then 2, 3 weeks or a year ago. And then you can help bringing them up. That's the important thing to it. So understanding that you are part on the journey, that you can talk to some who are ahead of you, but being well aware that there are some others who are not. So it's a kind of moral duty to help others in a similar situation then, like a mentoring in that sense, wherever required.
Yeah. Of course, I want to get a little bit deep into your next book, and in kind of your process on writing. But before that, I wanted to talk a little about confidence that you were talking about this book. It is something you said in that word. It is something that you build. It isn't something that you just have. You kind of build proof for it. But at the same time, I think there are more even types of confidence, because at the same time you need to be confident in doing, for example, the thing. You need to do the thing more. You kind of need to stack the proof of doing it. But at the same time, when you have kind of two people who have even one has more experience, but is even less confident than the person next that it has more confidence but lacks less expertise, and that person who has more confidence and less expertise, then the person does it like it is better off of it. They make more money just because of the confidence, but even when the skill is not there, then because the person who has even less confidence, but they are doing it over and over again, they're kind of, oh, I need to do this more and that more, and kind of, how do you think about it, and what would be your advice to those people?
I grew up as a shy introvert who in school would only speak up in mathematics, where speaking would not count at all. So that was a kind of a disadvantage. I recognized then that in order to get a message out, for me, it would be better to rather write than speak. And my teacher told me when I had my, whatever you call it, let's say when you finish high school, Matura in Swiss, and here they would call it maybe HSC, high school diploma, others call A levels, you know what I mean, before university. And I kind of failed compared to expectation in the subject of German, meaning the whole literature topic. It simply wasn't my day. So what can I do? Sometimes happens. Was not good enough. And my teacher said, don't worry, one day you will write a book. I said, one moment. The teacher knows me 3 years. He apparently sees something in me that I didn't see in myself. And when I had a couple of these ways to talk to others about how they perceive what I'm doing, which I think with 18, 19 is not a bad thing to do, to figure out which direction you want to do, what you want to study, ask others, how do you see me, instead of believing something. Then I figured out there kind of a pattern emerged, so that I realized people have an opinion about what I could potentially do, and then I directed myself to that topic, particular writing, and that gave me at the beginning a lot of rejections. Writing for newspaper, I wanted, no, 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 you cannot, you never wrote somewhere else. But one day, someone gives you a helping hand, and that gets you started. And that is a key thing. Think about the hero's journey concept. One day you will find one that is basically like the Q in James Bond, who gives them the latest Aston Martin to it, or whatever shape or form. In so many classic literature, it is there, the hero's journey. And when you recognize it, be open to it, there will be someone who can help and figure out that you have something, skill, talent, whatever it is, or circumstances that others don't have, that you overcame a situation in life early on, young, that it can relate with others, and then you figure out you can build confidence while keeping it humble. So that's important as well. Not in the sense of, oh, you're good in sports, you're in a kind of a year when the others are not good at it, and then you get too much like this. That's not good. So confidence should be humble, otherwise it wouldn't do. And this kind of humility is important. And I give you an example. So at the book launch from Reinvent Down Under, so I invited my email list. There's one gentleman, a sales book author, who wrote 4 or 5 books, a sales thriller about AI. Beautiful book. I have it somewhere there. He not only booked a ticket, so I know him for a couple of years, but he was high level in IT industry. But when I met him recently for an event, he came hugging. Gunnar, good to see that you do this book. Oh, when someone of higher level sees what I'm doing, that gets me, while being also a humble person, that gets me a healthy way of confidence in that there must be something in it. And I actually talked to him about something of what's inside here. In 2017, he said, Gunnar, you should write the book. It was about the layoff story, but I didn't want to write just that I lost my job, but more the transferable elements, and therefore it took so much longer. But when you find people who can help you with the proper values and recognize you have something in it, and you get to that point that you don't develop your own overconfidence, then it can work well. Then you build confidence.
Interesting. And now I want to get kind of to the obvious topic, which is networking. You said that in many ways in your life it helped you. And as you said, you were kind of this shy kid that only talked in a like math class. How did you get into building like such a big network, talking to a lot of people and all of it, and how to build like a good quality connection with people that is actually lasting? Because there's this saying that your network is your net worth. Yeah. So Yeah, what are your opinions on that?
So typically, as a young man with maybe 18, I would not really talk too much, as I mentioned before. And that was difficult in situation with others. I always felt that they have this extra confidence more that I didn't have. But then people recognize what I've been doing. Also, I wrote quite early on quite a bit, and that was a good starting point in university. I said, wow, apparently it's a great start out of school to say, okay, I'm not a shy person anymore. I'm just a normal student like everyone else, and I can do something. I've been a programmer before, then I started to study computer science, so there must be something that I would look what others do, that they would naturally ask me what I do as well. So I didn't see myself as below anymore, but rather on equal level. That was good. And then I also learned, and that was maybe in computer science not untypical, that instead of sitting and writing some kind of test, it would be more project work, collaboration. That was good. Collaboration only works when you're open to others. And then I recognized that there were maybe some events where I can hang out to learn what others are doing in a similar type of area on studies or sports or whatever. And I would go and attend and recognize they're listening to what I have to say. That was a big surprise. But that was a prerequisite. The only thing, I didn't feel comfortable to go towards strangers by myself. In the center of, I go in a room of people, I don't know anyone, and then I say, hey, Katka, who are you? Where are you from? I would not normally do this. I would rather be the one who will be then treated by those who have more this type of extrovert side. And that took a while to overcome. I became a tour guide in the 90s to bring tours from Hamburg to London and Prague. And I had the microphone in my hand. That was a big enemy. That was not easy. In the meantime, I take it not a problem. But to overcome this, what helped me was that if you have a role, like as a tour guide in a bus, from a view of the passenger, they might have thought the tour operator selected me, so apparently I have something to say. It was a kind of a functional authority given. So then I had to just play my role and what I knew about, in that sense, London, that I could give this feeling of excitement for the destination, and that's what they liked and got good feedback. Then I realized, okay, I can talk to other people, so that's good. And then later, when I worked in Switzerland, I had more a close network. Swiss people are not typically that open. But when I came here and I didn't really know anyone and different language, I thought, let's be open. The tricky thing, so I started on that Monday, which was the 2nd of May, 2016, in a class of 6. Every week was a different module, different number of people. And we had to introduce. I said, cool, lovely. I like that. People were open. And then I attended a networking event on my birthday, 4th of May, 2016. And one person who I met also attended the book launch this year. So that's quite fun. You stay in contact. And I thought, happy to listen to other people. And here in Australia, people are open. If you and me would talk in a pub and a third person comes, we immediately open up to them. Hey, who are you? What brings you here? That works here well. So then I got drawn into networking in that sense and said, okay, they might not be interested how life works in Europe because we're in Australia. But I figured out if I listen to people, what they have to do, what their dreams are, their challenges, I learn about the place. Not to give advice, but I say, oh, you have this. Oh, you work at Oracle. Good. But you know what? 20 minutes ago on that table there, I talked to some who was maybe at Lenovo, also IT in that sense or whatever, and maybe you should talk together. Oh, which one is it? Can you introduce? And that's what I do. I introduce people with each other so that then they can sort out and get the inspiration from it. And it is like paying forward into the universe, into karma, whatever it is, without the expectation of an immediate return. But that's how I built a network, based on helping others to connect themselves instead of saying, we do it better. No, nobody cares about another location. I'm now here. Big difference.
Yeah, so many things to unpack. And with that kind of, when it comes to this online world, you were kind of put in those situations where you needed to go out of your kind of comfortable zone and do all of this stuff, being a tour guide and all of it, because it was kind of either your job or you kind of had no other option basically. But now in today's world, everybody is just on the internet, which is of course a great, like, in general, networking platform, but all of them can be just closed behind the computer and behind like their profile, not really only talking through the messages. How they can find the courage to kind of even go to some event, if there are any these days, to kind of get to talking to strangers and actually build the connection.
Yeah, number one, being in general open with curiosity into the life of others, without judging, learning from them. And it works well when you go to another place because you don't know how things are done. And even when you are in, let's say, in the same country, when you are in Bratislava in Slovakia, you say, okay, how would it be in Vysoké Tatry in the mountains? When you've never went there, when you don't know the pace of life or whatever it is, then you are curious on that one. And they might want to hear about yourself as well. So play on the differences with the openness to learn, not to supersede one each other, but with that. I also learned if I have, as a shy person, some conversation starters in my head, it's actually working and helping to get something out, but not necessarily like, what do you work, where you at, and so that's too boring. People are not only defined by titles, so I have it in a book as well. So then rather, it's good to ask sometimes when there's an event series, hey, have you been to this event series beforehand? How did you go last time? That's valid to ask when you then add also what interests you. That gets into and lets the other person talk. The main thing, the driver is not the one who's talking, but is the one who can ask well. When you see this part of networking also, that you can steer a conversation, but make it in a way that not only yourself are learning, but also the others. So the worst thing you can do when somebody asks you what you're doing, what brings you here, that you then talk for 20 minutes. No, they want to talk about themselves. So you need to give them room as well.
Yeah. And to get that, you were talking a lot about this platform called LinkedIn, and how networking on there. And in one I think podcast you said that like if you like don't if you're a businessman and you don't have a LinkedIn, then you're not a business person. And as personally someone who doesn't have like an active LinkedIn, uh, how did you get into it, and how do you think, like, what's the dynamic there? I think even on social media it is like with countries all have their own dynamic and things, like how they work on there. So maybe even for
Yeah.
a beginner, you know.
So first of all, LinkedIn is not only social media, it's the only type of a reference checkpoint. If I get somebody asks me, hey, which business coach for my situation would like to choose? And I can give them advice of people who I know. But then I would say, talk to this person or talk to that person. I give maybe even two. Maybe I give only one recommendation, but the person asks someone else, and they at the end might have choices. So how can you figure out without talking to the service provider beforehand? You want to know who they are, what they do, is they suitable or not. It's same like when you go and you buy something from fashion. You first want to check yourself what's there before you talk to a staff member. Same thing. And LinkedIn is a standardized approach. Always the, let's say, recommendation section is at the same place. The skills are at the same place. The content is on the same place compared to a website where everything is different. So that's the first thing you can check if they are on LinkedIn. Okay, having a profile is one side of things. You see it in 2 seconds. But does it look current? Does it look like they are in business? They know what they're talking about? And apparently there is feedback on the work. I don't need to read hundreds of posts of someone, but and see they're in the business. They have the right topics that are relevant for me that I would like to know more and hire them for. So that's perfect compared to the one who might do a much better job, but is not visible, never talks about something. That's tricky. But that's the first checkpoint I would do on LinkedIn, and it needs For me, 10 seconds is enough, even less, just to see if it's okay, it's current, it's updated. They don't need to do content every day. But then the other checkpoint I would do would be then, on this case, for the website, to find out how they present themselves there. And often we see coaches who then started a blog in 2023 for 4 weeks in a row, and since then nothing. Oh, they're out of business. But we also know that many service providers are pretty bad in representing themselves, but they can do it well for clients. But LinkedIn is the best reference check for most professional platforms. Not for an Uber driver, they don't need to be there. Maybe someone who works in a bakery, also no need for that, or in a cafe. But anything decent, anything academic should be there, because you can connect with people. The earlier you do it, the more it helps you later in life, because someone who you know in the age of 20 or 25, within 10 years, might go in one direction or another direction, and at the end, somewhere you come together again. That's the important thing, to play the network and play the connection possibilities. And that's the only place which shows that. Like Facebook does for more, for let's say more casual type of thing, or B2C, but LinkedIn for B2B for sure.
Okay. And one of the last topics I want to touch on is kind of what are your next plans with, even the next book that you're making, and in books in general, because I think a lot of people have books, but nobody's really talking about it. Like, what's the process and what are the things behind it that nobody actually sees? And I think I saw you making an audio book, which is pretty cool. I'm curious about like how it all works.
So that was actually this one, the new book here. So then I went into a recording studio in the local public library. That was pretty cool that they have that. Fully fledged audio and video recording studio. So I spoke the whole book in 2.5 hours, including most of the tasks, let's say reading, sometimes rewinding, getting back, checking something. Was quite long in one sitting. That was really good. And from there, I need to rework the audio so that the platform that I can put it to understand that. Today, in the age of AI, I could also have version recorded by 11 Labs and then have it automated from this one. Much, much faster, no effort needed. But the biggest audiobook sources like Audible, which is the Amazon part of it, would not take that. So I thought I better speak by myself, sit in the studio, have all of the files, check the quality, but they have very professional way of doing this. It's not just on the microphone of the MacBook. And from there, I can then put it into Audible. If that goes well, haven't done that check yet. Create a cover for it, and at least for Spotify. And there's different ways how I can then utilize this, because for some people, audio is good. When it is shorter chunks, that's also required. So the book has typically 4 to 5 minutes per chapter, and you can listen to 4 to 5 minutes in one topic. That works instead of 30 minutes in one go. But there was a lot of learning to it that I started in different AI tools, a different way of talking by myself. I have the proper microphone for this for myself, the studio microphone for home when I create online courses, as I've done for my last book. And somewhere I have to look where my microphone actually is located. Shall have it somewhere, a mobile one, because I like sometimes to be sure that I can also produce by myself. And then I have a little nice, you see, you can simply take it this way with cable, speaking font. It's good enough for an online course, but not good enough for an audiobook on Audible. So that's one. So for the new book, Reinvent Down Under, I've done that. Happy Habits already recorded. So that's good. That's a book from beforehand, which also has now a new online course, which I created 1 month ago. And that is also nice, because some people would like to learn more with practical experience from the author instead of only reading the book. So then I took this book here, Happy Habits, and put it into an online course format, which has also 4 modules, 12 lessons, quite similar to the book, but it gets even further, a bit more practical for implementation, and a lot of tasks around that. And even when you say what comes out of this one, so for Happy Habits, I also completed a workbook that is in this type of yellow, and the writing is partially in white and blue. that gets the highly practical one. And in end of the year, November, I will have a journal where you can write 52 weeks of your whole habit type of thing in one book. Easy. Once you have one topic, you can do a little bit more with that. So that's for sure. But yeah, Katja, I can also help people with book writing. So therefore, the next book, as I mentioned, is called Write Your Book Backwards, where I showed the whole story, how that works. And initially, I wrote the Happy Habits just to prove that I can run my method. And for the Reinventor Runner, it's the same thing. Pretty fast when it comes to the pure writing, but more extensive on the whole concept and do everything at once to think about the launch, but then mostly the impact. For some people, impact would be something like making more money. Some others, it's spreading good word. So I talked to one potential client who is a former pastor, so he has good Christian values in his book that he would like to create, but he doesn't know how to make it in form of a book. So I can help many people with that.
Hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. And yeah, I think we're like now. It's a good time to end, and I just want to say that this was a very valuable conversation, and I was really glad to have you here. All of the links for your social media and kind of the book will be in the pinned comment, so people can check that out. And I even want to thank all of the viewers that came till the end. Hope they had like the same value from it I had.
Thank you so much for inviting me for your podcast. Happy to be here.